Hello to you. Good afternoon. It is 1 o'clock. This is Tracye Hutchins with Atlanta News First, of course, bringing you your top 5 stories for this Wednesday. And we're taking a look at a lot of different things right now. And bear with me here. This is kind of our first day on this, at least for me anyway. We want to talk about what's going on right now in our world and show you what is happening. Let me get some things up here. All right, so the first story we're going to talk about right now is Vice President Kamala Harris. She is in town, of course, touting President Biden's accomplishments over the last couple of years. She is in town right now speaking. You could see her there. And here's the thing about this, even though you may not be interested necessarily in what she's talking about, that could impact traffic. Hopefully you didn't get stuck in a traffic jam earlier today, right around 2 o'clock. That's something you need to be aware of. And also she's leaving between 3 and 5 p.m. So just a quick note for you as you think about that. Of course, the VP landed earlier this afternoon at Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport. And she met with Atlanta Mayor Andre Dickens, of course, there on the tarmac. And once again, she is talking about a number of things that President Biden has accomplished during his tenure as well. And the thing is, this is a 20-state kind of blitz all across the country by President Biden's cabinet members over the next 2 days, of course, touting his progress. President Biden, no doubt, getting ready for a 2024 run, really kind of gearing up the country for that. Another story I did want to talk to you about is this one coming here. This one, certainly a lot of people in the metro Atlanta community have been very concerned about. This is a murder suspect right now that the police are looking for in Atlanta. Maybe you heard about this murder that happened at Republic Lounge. This is in West Midtown. The owner of that, the co-owner of that, is Mike Gedewan, well-known, well-respected. Back in the day, you may remember Vanquish and Rain, those clubs as well. Right now, Atlanta police are looking for a suspect, Jonathan David Soto. From what we understand, this man was asked to leave the club because he was intoxicated and then came back to the club much later when Gedewan was leaving the facility and shot him there in the parking lot. In fact, I actually just drove past Republic Lounge this morning and could see a number of flowers still sitting out in front of the building. Again, Mike Gedewan, very well respected, had been in the co-ownership of clubs here in the metro Atlanta area for more than 20 years. He leaves behind a wife and 4 children. Once again, authorities looking for a suspect, Jonathan David Soto. So they want everyone to be out on the lookout for him. This story certainly interesting. Want to get to that. Reparations in Fulton County. A lot of people talking about that. It's interesting because it comes on the heels of a new task force that the city of Atlanta created to bridge the gap, that wealth gap between African Americans, Black Americans, and white Americans. I found it interesting because the median income of Black households here in Atlanta, $28,000 per year compared to white households, $83,000 a year. When we look at Atlanta compared to the rest of the country, the wealth gap is wider here than it is really anywhere else in the country. So in Fulton County, they're actually looking at reparations, and it could really benefit could benefit thousands of people, because $250,000 certainly could be a game changer for a number of people in Fulton County. So they've set aside this task force. $250,000 to really look at how they could bridge that gap and make things a bit easier for families that have been left out, for communities that have been left out. So this task force is really looking at what are the priorities, what are the objectives, how can we do this, how can we bridge that gap and make things somewhat equal. Certainly they can't do it in one sitting, but that's what they're looking at, is to try and even things out in Fulton County. So again, this task force will be examining the way Jim Crow era laws and slavery were denied to African Americans in the county, and really giving better access to resources and better opportunities as well. So they'll be looking at everything from voting to healthcare to jails and courts as well. They plan to give their findings to the commissioners in October of 2024. So this is something a lot of people are looking at as well. Let's get to another story, because again, we're giving you a number of stories that we're looking at. Let's talk about this one here. All right, so Valentine's Day coming up next week. Hopefully you bought your flowers and your candies as well. And this time of year, always, the Better Business Bureau and so many other agencies warn us about scams, because I think a lot of people can be vulnerable this time of year. So they basically say, watch out for these scam artists. They always come up with an excuse as to why they just can't meet in person. Ladies out there, I know you've kind of heard this one before. This is certainly a red flag, and anytime anyone asks you for money, that's a red flag too. According to the Federal Trade Commission, victims lost $547 million in 2021 alone. Valentine's Day, one of those days that scammers certainly target. So here's some advice. Be wary, always. If you meet someone online and they're quick to move on to communicate off of social media, those scammers will hint at financial troubles before ever asking you for money. They may say, oh, you know, I had some issues with my car. Oh, you know, my kids, they need some money. You know, little Jimmy needs some extra money to get the football outfit or whatever it may be. Those catfishers, they start talking about having a future together and certainly get your hopes up very high very early on. And when someone says, I love you, that early on, that's certainly a red flag too. As they say, if it sounds a little too good to be true, if this person sounds too perfect, more than likely that is a scam and something you need to look out for as well. So Valentine's Day coming up. Hope he is not lost completely, but something to watch out for. And we will leave you with this, you know, talking about sweets, Oreos, one of our favorites, I think, Oreo cookies. The Hawks actually have their very own Oreo cookie. Let's take a look at that. They're always coming up with some new marketing tool, of course, and it is part of a partnership with the NBA to give all 30 teams custom Oreos. I don't see any chocolate in any of these. Do you? You can see the Hawks cookie kind of right in the middle with the sprinkles all around it. Looks like a lot of icing, but I'm sure it's still delicious. The Hawks certainly, their logo is presented on the Oreo cookie. It's red and white with sprinkles around the edges. You can actually order a 12-pack of the Oreos online for $40. Only 12 cookies for $40? Doesn't that seem kind of expensive? It's a little bit outrageous. I'm hoping the cookie is certainly worth the bite. But those are your top 5 stories. Certainly hope you will join us for the news at 3 o'clock coming up in just a few minutes, where we will cover many, many more stories. But we're glad you joined us here on Atlanta News First Plus for my first day, my debut doing this. Promise things will get a lot smoother, but thanks for listening in, and we hope you come on back in the next hour. We'll have more stories for you then. I'm Tracye Hutchins.